اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد, and welcome to our next video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel. And please, before we start, if I could please recommend to you that you subscribe to the channel and give this video, if you enjoy it, give it a like, give it a share, so that others can also benefit from it. And inshallah, it can be the means of Islamic knowledge spreading all over the world, inshallah ta'ala. Now, today we're looking at this fantastic book written by Dr. Hamzah Bakri, titled Mahiyyah Ulum al-Hadith wal-Ittijahat al-Naqdiyya al-Mu'asirah. Now, Mahiyyah literally means, it comes from this word or sentence, you could say, ma huwa, ma huwa. So this book is essentially attempting to discuss the concept of what is the ma huwa of ulum al-hadith. What is ulum al-hadith? So it provides, you could say, a bird's eye view. Mahiyyah of a field of knowledge provides the bird's eye view of the field of knowledge, and this book is attempting to do that for the field of ulum al-hadith. So he discusses essentially on page 21 and also page 23 that mahiyyah of a field, the latest scholars deduce the idea that it is essentially the 10 al-Mabadi al-Asharah, that is referred to as the 10 essential beginning ideas that you need to know before you enter into a field, which is the definition of the field of knowledge that you're about to embark upon or study, the topic of the field of knowledge that you're looking at, and the purpose of the field of knowledge, and other ideas as well. However, these three are the most important. So these are the three most important things that you need to know before you enter into any field of knowledge, which is the definition. What is the definition of it? What's the topic that is going to be discussed in this field of knowledge? And finally, what's the purpose? And that will give you what we call a surah dhahniyah. It will give you the essence, the mahiyyah, the mafhum, the understanding of that field of knowledge. So I cannot judge my hand because it's not so good to look with. I can't look at things properly with my hand because that's not the purpose of my hand. So if I am going to judge a field of knowledge, I need to know what's the definition of the field of knowledge, what's the topic, what do you discuss in this field of knowledge, and what is the purpose. And the purpose is perhaps one of the most important points. So the mahiyyah of something is basically the understanding of it. What understanding do we have of that item or of that field? So firstly, he states that every field of knowledge has 10 preliminary topics referred to as the mabadi of the field. And these 10 mabadi or preliminary topics, they help to provide you with the mahiyyah of that field. And out of these 10 mabadi, the most important are the definition, the topic, and the purpose. So definition is had, the topic is mawdu, and the purpose is the ghaya. Now, Dr. Hamzah states that when it comes to ulum al-hadith, no scholar of hadith essentially discussed these three key definitions. No scholar of hadith discussed the mahiyyah of ulum al-hadith until the 9th century Hijri, beginning with Ibn Hajar. Now, before Ibn Hajar, in the mid-8th century, we had some scholars discussing the mahiyyah of ulum al-hadith. However, they were not muhaddithun. So he mentions here on page 30, he discusses that علوم الحديث, he says, نلاحظ أن الفريق الأول كان له فضل السبق إلى تعريف هذا العلم. So the first scholars to define علوم الحديث, the field of علوم الحديث, بالمعنى الدقيق لوصف لكنهم ليسوا بمحدثين. They were not محدثون. So they were the likes of al-Kirmani, the commentator on Bukhari, who surprisingly was not actually a muhaddith in the بالوصف الدقيق, you know, the literal definition of a muhaddith. Then we had Ibn al-Akfani, Ibn Jama'a, others who the author feels that were not truly, they don't truly fall within the definition of a muhaddith. And the first scholar to kind of come and give a definition of hadith seems to be most likely, according to the author, again, Dr. Hamzah Bakri, is Ibn Hajar. And those who were living during the time of Ibn Hajar. So it's a very late definition for Ulum al-Hadith. Now, this book essentially obviously is providing a bird's eye view on Ulum al-Hadith, and from page 69 he discusses how the presentation of the Masail of Mustalah al-Hadith. So if you look on page 69, he discusses how the presentation of Mustalah al-Hadith, which he says the early scholars would refer to as Ilm al-Hadith or Ulum al-Hadith, it evolved over time, how the scholars used to present Mustalah al-Hadith. So it began with Imam al-Hakim's certain way of presenting, then Ibn Salah, then and then it was codified by later scholars, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, and he presents and he prefers the presentation of Ibn Hajar in Nukhbah al-Fikr. So Siyagha to Ibn Hajar, he feels this is the best Siyagha, this is the best presentation. أن أحسن صياغة تصنيفية لعلوم الحديث هي صياغة الحافظ ابن حجر فإنها فضلا عن حسنها من حيث الهيكلية النظرية قد ظهر فيها بوضوح موضوع علوم الحديث وغايته. So he's obviously he's quite into logic, and it's quite important to be into logic, especially when we come into this field, because it needs to make sense. You know, that we know there is a Sahih hadith and we know there's a Da'if hadith. We can't say there is nothing in between. There is, logically, if I ask you, we have the upper limit and we have the lower limit. What do we have in between? It's the middle, right? So these are concepts which are logical. So in the same way, this needs to be applied to the field of hadith. So he prefers the presentation of Nukhbah al-Fikr. Now, I understand the whole issues with Nukhbah al-Fikr and the whole presentation with Mustalah al-Hadith, and we've discussed it at length in our Nukhbah al-Fikr course, which you can access, by the way. If you look into the description of this video, I'll put a form which you can fill, and it will take you to the course, and it will take you to contacting me, and inshallah I can add you onto that course if you want to. However, what I really want to touch upon is this idea on page 118 that he presents. That he says, look, Ulum al-Hadith is of 4 types, right? And he divides Ulum al-Hadith into 4 types, which I really did like. He says Riwayatul Hadith. Riwayatul Hadith, this is like narrating hadith. This is like the books of the Kutub al-Sitta. Then you got Mustalah al-Hadith. This is essentially the books of Mustalah, like Muqaddimah ibn Salah, Nuzhatul Nadhar, etc. Then you got Naqdul Hadith, which is books of Ilal, Al-Jarh wa Ta'dil, books of Rijal, right? Books of Ilal, essentially you could say mainly. And then you got Fahmul Hadith, which is books like Mushkilul Hadith, Gharibul Hadith. Now, what's the purpose of a Mustalah book? What is the purpose of a Mustalah book? So a lot of later scholars critique some of our Mustalah books that they are too 1 + 1 = 2. They are too codified logically. It is to essentially take you to Naqdul Hadith. So Mustalahul Hadith is a madkhal towards Naqdul Hadith. Now, because a lot of scholars don't view Mustalah al-Hadith as a madkhal, and they view it as the thing, or they view the purpose of Mustalah al-Hadith to be that such that it takes you to the capability of Naqd al-Hadith, they critique the books of Mustalah. Whereas if you have a proper understanding, and that comes back to the title of the book, Mahiyyah, what's the correct way in which we should view Ulum al-Hadith? So he says we should view Mustalah as the madkhal, the introduction towards Naqd al-Hadith. So it's not gonna take you to Naqd al-Hadith straight away, but it's not also useless as well, in the sense that it is not Naqd al-Hadith itself, and neither is it something that completely has nothing to do with Naqd al-Hadith. So we shouldn't completely break it and destroy it, and neither should we consider it to be the be-all and the end-all. The correct approach is to look at its purpose and treat it and give it its due right, and treat it according to its true level, right? So أعطي كل ذي حق أنزل الناس منازلهم is the kind of idea that he's getting across with the Mustalah books. And then the last part of the book is where he now touches on this idea that I've been mentioning, which is the 3 approaches that are found towards Mustalah books. So the first approach is to take the Mustalah books as the be-all and the end-all, and to treat the Mustalah books as though they will teach you how to literally do Naqdul Hadith. That Mustalah, the moment I've read all the books of Mustalah, I'm now ready to start labeling certain ahadith as sahih and da'if. This is, according to the author, this is an incorrect approach, and he feels, again, I stress that this is his opinion, he feels that this was the approach of Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani, which is that to view Mustalah al-Hadith as what all you need to be able to know Naqd al-Hadith. So, and we do see this sometimes in the writings of Shaykh Albani, and he gives lots of examples for that. The second approach is to completely say, well, Mustalah al-Hadith, that when we look at what Mustalah takes us to, when we check actually the books of Ilal, which are the real forms of Naqd al-Hadith, we realize our mustalah doesn't fully help at times. The rule breaks a lot of times. So therefore now just completely ignore mustalah al-hadith and ignore it and treat it as though it's a field which is useless, and we need to, redo the whole process again, and everyone kind of messed up. And this, he feels, is the approach of Sheikh Dr. Hamzah Malibari, and he obviously doesn't agree with this approach. So he feels both of these approach are two extremes, completely ignoring mustalah and completely viewing it to be the be-all and the end-all. And the correct approach, he feels, is the third approach, and he feels that Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari and Sheikh Abdul Rahman ibn Yahya al-Muallimi held this approach, which is they viewed mustalah as a madkhal, as an introduction to naqd al-hadith, but it is not naqd al-hadith. You still need to do mumarasa, you still need to have experience of the books of ilal, reading books of ilal after you've read the mustalah books, to be able to now develop within you that taste and that dhawq of the muhaddithun. So this is why the book is essentially a defense in some ways of the books of mustalah al-hadith. There are other really brilliant, unique features in the book, by the way. On page 29, for example, I found it interesting how he writes the name Mughalatai as Mughultai, right, and which is a very famous way of writing it as well. And I think because of the fact that it's an Ajami name, Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari actually say فَلْعَبْ بِهِ كَيْفَ شِئْتَ. You can say the name however, write it however you want. Allah knows best. I don't have research on this, by the way, but I just found it interesting. He makes it a point to kind of put a dhamma on the Mughultai there, if you look at it there. And then another one is on page 175, wherein he discusses the views of Sheikh Nasiruddin al-Albani in refutation of Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari on the issue of the hadith of Mu'adh في الاجتهاد والرأي. So he feels in this whole approach as well, he feels that Sheikh Albani rahimahullah has viewed the whole issue to be 1 + 1 = 2, whereas Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari, although he doesn't view mustalah books as useless, he definitely does not take them as the be-all and end-all, and he looks at things a bit more deeper, and he looks at qara'in, which, as we know, is it's a golden word when it comes to ulum al-hadith, the issue of qara'in and mumarasah, you could say, or qara'in especially, and how the muhaddithun, the rules are more like they're an expression of what their inner thoughts and feelings were to some degree. Now the truly amazing section of this book is actually page 205 onwards, when he discusses the importance of the books written by the mutaakhirun. Now again, I may not fully agree with all of his conclusions up until this point, but after this point I fully agree with it. Even up until this point I thought a lot of brilliant points were made, but I don't have the research to be able to agree with everything or disagree with everything. I'll leave it to you as the reader, and I hope you enjoy the book. But from page 205, I do actually think it's a very important read, and I do agree with it. The importance of the books written by the mutaakhirun. And just in this day and age as well, we have this concept of go back to the mutaqaddimun, ignore the mutaakhirun completely, don't even look at the books of the mutaakhirun. This actually, he says, he attributes this to be to have started with Sheikh Muhammad Abdu, and it's actually been influenced by modernism, and modernism has played a role in completely dismantling looking at the books of the mutaakhirun. And we know this if you read other books as well, they kind of point this out. At the same time, we're not saying don't look at the books of the mutaqaddimun at all. We're saying give both of them their due, right? So he mentions how Sheikh Muhammad Abdu did this in the field of balagha, and then Sheikh Mahmud Shakir came and basically corrected him and said, well, how is a person supposed to jump to the book of Abdul Qahir, and try to basically understand Abdul Qahir's book without first looking at some of the preliminary books? In the same way, this applies to ulum al-hadith. How are you just supposed to start understanding how ulum al-hadith works just by reading al-ilal of Ibn Abi Hatim or al-ilal of ad-Daraqutni? You need some beginner step, and that's where the mustalah books kind of come in. Again, would you say the full approach is correct? Would you say the mustalah books could still be slightly edited to inculcate some, I don't know, wallahu alam, to inculcate some of the approaches of the mutaqaddimun? You could make an argument for that. Allah knows best. I'll let you read the book, and I'll let you decide what you think is what you think of the book. Inshallah, I think you will enjoy it. I do like the fact that he promotes some of the books of the mutaakhirun, because there seems to be a tide and wave in this day and age of just not looking at the books of the mutaakhirun, or considering them to have all just been doing tawarud, following one another. which is not entirely true. I think that's rather unfair, but nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy reading this book. I think it's a fantastic book. I really did enjoy it. Whether you agree with everything or not in the book is obviously up for discussion, and I'm sure this is not the end of the discussion in this book on this topic, but I do hope you enjoyed this book. I hope you purchase it. I hope you read it, and if you do inshallah read this book or benefit from it, then inshallah don't forget to remember me in your du'as. Make du'as for me as well, and also please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Jazakumullahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.